You pride yourself on being a good person. You donate, you recycle, you post about justice. But what if your morality is not a sign of your goodness, but a symptom of something broken? What if the very act of being virtuous means you're already too late? This is the uncomfortable truth Laozi whispers from the ruins of ancient China. Imagine a time when civilization was fraying at the edges. The Zhou dynasty was crumbling, warlords carved up the land, and philosophers scrambled to diagnose the sickness. Confucius offered rules, rituals, and filial piety. The legalists demanded harsh laws. But in a remote valley, an old man named Laozi saw something deeper. He watched as people clung to benevolence and righteousness like drowning sailors to driftwood. He heard the scholars praise wisdom while their clever schemes brought chaos. For Laozi, these virtues were not solutions, they were symptoms. They were the fever that appears when the body is already infected. The more loudly a society proclaims its morality, the more it reveals its decay. This was not cynicism, it was a radical diagnosis of the human condition. Think of it like this: you don't put a bandage on a wound that isn't there. The very act of applying a bandage acknowledges the injury. Similarly, when a society begins to preach benevolence and righteousness, it is confessing that harmony has been lost. Laozi saw the chaos around him, the wars, the betrayals, the crumbling of families, and he noticed a pattern. The more people talked about being good, the worse things became. They were not fixing the problem, they were papering over it. And the paper was thin. The great Tao, the natural flow of life, had been abandoned. In its place, people built elaborate structures of morality, like scaffolding around a collapsing building. But the scaffolding was not the building. It was a sign that the building was already in ruins. Laozi invites you to look beneath the surface. When you hear a politician speak of family values, ask yourself, what is broken that needs such emphasis? When a company boasts about its ethical practices, wonder, what unethical practices are they hiding? The very act of proclaiming virtue is often a mask for vice. This is not to say that all morality is false, but that true virtue is silent. It doesn't need to be announced. It simply is. As you walk through your day, notice the things you do out of a sense of duty versus those you do out of natural inclination. The former are often efforts to compensate for a lack of harmony. The latter flow from the Tao within you. Laozi's insight is a mirror. If you find yourself constantly trying to be good, perhaps you have lost touch with the goodness that is already there. Laozi's words cut through the noise like a blade. He wrote, dot. In English, when the great Tao is lost, benevolence and righteousness appear. When wisdom and intelligence emerge, great hypocrisy arises. When family relationships are out of harmony, filial piety and parental kindness appear. When the nation is in chaos, loyal ministers appear. Each line is a mirror held up to our desperate attempts to fix what we broke. In the village of Willow Creek, there lived a man named Chen. He was known as the most filial son in the region. Every morning, he brought his mother tea. Every evening, he massaged her feet. Neighbors would nod and say, "What a virtuous man." But Chen's virtue was born from neglect. He had ignored his mother for years, buried in his work. Only when she fell ill and the village gossiped did he rush to perform his duties. His filial piety was a performance, a mask for his guilt. One day, a traveler passed through and asked Chen, "Why do you serve your mother so diligently?" Chen replied, "Because it is right. Because a good son must." The traveler smiled sadly and said, "You speak of duty, not love. The tree does not try to bear fruit, it simply grows. The river does not strive to flow, it simply moves. Your effort is a sign that something is already broken." Chen stood silent, the tea in his hand growing cold. He realized that his virtue was not a flower, but a weed growing in the cracks of a neglected garden. Let me tell you more about Chen. Before his mother fell ill, Chen was a merchant, always traveling. He would send money home but rarely visited. His mother lived alone, her health declining slowly. Chen justified his absence by saying he was providing for her. But the truth was simpler. He was afraid of the intimacy, of the vulnerability that comes with true care. When the village began to whisper, Chen panicked. He quit his travels, bought expensive medicines, and performed his duties with theatrical precision. But the traveler saw through it. "You are not serving your mother," the traveler said. "You are serving your reputation. Your actions are a response to shame, not love." Chen's story is a mirror for all of us. How often do we do good deeds because we fear judgment, not because we feel compassion? How many of our virtues are actually vices in disguise? The traveler's words haunted Chen. That night, he sat by his mother's bedside, not to perform any duty, but simply to be present. For the first time, he held her hand without thinking about what others would say. And in that silence, he felt a flicker of something real. It was not the grand virtue he had been praised for, but a quiet, unnameable connection. The Tao, perhaps. Chen learned that true goodness is not something you do, it is something you are. And you cannot be it while trying to prove it. The next morning, Chen did not bring tea. He simply sat with his mother, and they talked, not about duty, but about the clouds outside the window. The village continued to praise him, but Chen no longer cared. He had stopped performing and started living. Let's peel this chapter like an onion, layer by layer. First, when the great Tao is lost, benevolence and righteousness appear. The Tao is the natural way, the flow of life before labels. When you live in harmony with it, you don't need to be kind, kindness is automatic. But when the Tao fades, you invent morality to compensate. It's like building a dam because the river has dried up. The dam is a monument to absence. Second, when wisdom and intelligence emerge, great hypocrisy arises. Think of the smartest people you know. They can argue any side, spin any narrative. Intelligence without Tao becomes a tool for deception. The more wisdom we accumulate, the more elaborate our lies become. A child doesn't need to lie, a politician does. Third, when family relationships are out of harmony, filial piety and parental kindness appear. In a healthy family, love is unspoken. You don't need to declare, "I am a good parent," because it's evident in every glance. But when dysfunction creeps in, you compensate with grand gestures. The husband who buys expensive gifts to hide his infidelity. The parent who posts perfect family photos while ignoring their child's tears. Fourth, when the nation is in chaos, loyal ministers appear. History is full of heroes who emerged during crises. But why did the crisis happen in the first place? The loyal minister is a bandage on a wound that should never have been inflicted. Laozi asks us to look upstream, not downstream. He says, don't celebrate the firefighter, ask why the fire started. This is not to dismiss virtue, but to question its origin. True goodness is invisible. It doesn't need a name. Now, let's go deeper. Consider the first line, when the great Tao is lost, benevolence and righteousness appear. This is not a condemnation of benevolence and righteousness themselves. It is an observation about their context. Think of a healthy ecosystem. In a thriving forest, every organism plays its role without conscious effort. The deer does not think, "I must be gentle." It simply is. But when the forest is disturbed, say, by a drought, the deer may become aggressive, competing for scarce resources. At that point, we might praise peaceful behavior as a virtue. But that virtue is a reaction to the disturbance, not a natural state. Similarly, in human society, when the Tao is lost, when people are disconnected from their innate nature, they start to codify morality. They create rules and labels. But these rules are like training wheels on a bicycle. They are necessary only when balance is lost. The goal is not to perfect the training wheels, but to learn to ride without them. Now, the second line, when wisdom and intelligence emerge, great hypocrisy arises. This is paradoxical because we usually value intelligence. But Laozi sees it differently. Intelligence, when divorced from the Tao, becomes cunning. It is the ability to manipulate, to deceive, to create elaborate justifications for selfish actions. The greatest hypocrites are often the most intelligent. They know how to appear virtuous while serving their own interests. Think of the corporate executive who gives speeches about sustainability while his company pollutes rivers. Or the politician who campaigns on family values while having an affair. Their intelligence allows them to craft a convincing facade. But the facade is hollow. The third line, when family relationships are out of harmony, filial piety and parental kindness appear. In a harmonious family, love flows naturally. Parents care for children, children respect parents, not because of obligation, but because of genuine affection. But when harmony breaks down, you get performance. The child who visits out of duty, the parent who gives gifts out of guilt. These actions are not wrong, but they are symptoms of a deeper problem. The fourth line, when the nation is in chaos, loyal ministers appear. This is the most political of Laozi's observations. Throughout history, we celebrate heroes who emerge during crises. But why was there a crisis? Often, it was because the leaders were incompetent or corrupt. The loyal minister is a symptom of that failure. A truly wise ruler would prevent the chaos from occurring in the first place. The best leader is one whose existence is barely noticed. So, what does this mean for you? It means that your virtues, your kindness, your intelligence, your loyalty, may be signs that you have lost touch with the Tao. They are not inherently bad, but they are indicators. They point to a wound. The question is, are you willing to look at the wound, or do you prefer to admire the bandage? Consider the Zen story of the monk who was asked, "What is the most virtuous act?" The monk replied, "Not knowing you are virtuous." There is a modern parallel in the concept of a flow state in psychology. When you are fully absorbed in an activity, you don't think about how well you're doing. Self-consciousness vanishes. The moment you say, "I am being creative," you stop creating. Similarly, the moment you say, "I am being good," you are no longer good. You are merely acting. Laozi's insight aligns with the wisdom of the Taoist sage Zhuangzi, who told of a man who forgot his feet because his shoes fit perfectly. When society is healthy, morality is forgotten. We don't need to talk about love when love is everywhere. We don't need to preach honesty when no one lies. The very existence of moral language is a red flag. Let me expand on this story. The monk was sitting by a stream when a traveler approached. The traveler was a scholar, well versed in Confucian classics. He asked, "Master, I have studied the virtues for decades. I practice benevolence, righteousness, and propriety. Yet I feel empty. What am I missing?" The monk picked up a pebble and dropped it into the stream. "Did the pebble try to be round?" he asked. "No," said the scholar. "It simply is round." "Exactly," said the monk. "The pebble does not know its roundness. It does not proclaim it. Yet it is round. Your virtues are like that. When you are truly virtuous, you do not know it. The moment you know it, you are no longer virtuous. You are just a performer." The scholar was silent. He realized that his years of study had made him a connoisseur of virtue, but not a practitioner. He had been so focused on the label that he had missed the substance. This story echoes in our modern world. We have entire industries built around virtue, self-help books, motivational speakers, ethics consultants. They teach us how to be good. But Laozi would say, if you need to be taught, you have already lost the way. The Tao is not something you learn, it is something you remember. It is the natural state you were born with, before society conditioned you to be good. The second story is about a carpenter named Wood. He was famous for his perfect joints, never using nails or glue. A young apprentice asked him, "Master, how do you make such perfect joints?" Wood replied, I don't. I just remove the wood that doesn't belong. The joint is already there. This is the Taoist approach to virtue. You don't add goodness, you remove the obstacles to goodness. You don't become moral, you uncover your innate morality. The apprentice was confused. But how do I know what to remove? Wood smiled. You don't. You just pay attention. The wood tells you. In the same way, if you pay attention to your life, you will know what is out of harmony. You don't need a rule book. You need presence. The carpenter's wisdom is a metaphor for living without labels. When you stop trying to be virtuous, you become open to the natural flow of compassion, honesty, and kindness. These qualities arise spontaneously, like a spring from the earth. They are not forced. They are not performed. They are simply expressions of the Tao within you. Now, bring this into your life. Do you post about social justice to signal your virtue, or to genuinely help? When you call yourself a good person, do you feel a secret pride? That pride is a sign of separation. Next time you feel the urge to declare your goodness, pause. Ask, am I compensating for something? In your relationships, notice when you perform love. A spontaneous hug is worth 1,000 planned gestures. At work, watch for smart solutions that complicate rather than simplify. The best ideas often feel obvious. And in your nation, be wary of leaders who promise to restore morality. They are likely the ones who broke it. The Tao doesn't need defenders, it needs practitioners. Let's get practical. Consider your social media habits. You see a post about a humanitarian crisis, and you feel the urge to share it with a comment expressing outrage. But ask yourself, does that share actually help the victims, or does it just make you feel virtuous? If it's the latter, you are using the crisis as a prop for your own ego. Laozi would say, true compassion is quiet. It donates anonymously. It helps without seeking recognition. Next, think about your work. Are you known as the smart person who always has a clever solution? That cleverness may be a sign that you are overcomplicating things. The Taoist approach is to find the simplest path, the one that requires the least effort. The best solutions are often invisible. They don't draw attention to themselves. Finally, consider your nation. Political leaders often campaign on a platform of restoring traditional values. But according to Laozi, this is a red flag. It means those values have been lost. A truly healthy society doesn't need to talk about values, it lives them. So, when you hear such rhetoric, look deeper. What is the leader hiding? What chaos are they trying to cover up? The Taoist way is to be skeptical of all moral pronouncements. Instead, focus on your own alignment with the Tao. Live simply, act naturally, and let your goodness flow without naming it. This is not passivity, it is radical authenticity. It is the courage to be good without needing to be seen as good. Your virtue is a bandage. The wound is your belief that you need one. So the next time you catch yourself being good, don't celebrate. Look deeper. What have you lost that you need to name your kindness? Perhaps it's time to stop trying to be virtuous and simply be. The Tao doesn't need your labels. It only needs your presence.